My name is Daniel Carter, and until last spring, I thought I had life figured out. For nearly a decade, I worked at Redwood Electronics, a mid-sized but fast-growing consumer tech company in Austin, Texas. I started as an entry-level logistics coordinator and worked my way up to senior operations analyst. It wasn't glamorous work, but I loved it. Negotiating with vendors, analyzing supply chains, streamlining operations. I had a knack for spotting errors in spreadsheets no one else noticed and closing loopholes in our processes before they became problems. Colleagues joked that I had the instincts of a detective with the patience of an accountant. I took that as a compliment. I wasn't the loudest person in the room, but my name carried weight in the company. If a warehouse order went wrong or a shipment got delayed, I was the one they called to fix it. I liked that role. I liked being the calm in the storm, the person who could untangle a mess when others panicked. My manager, Jason Miller, was different. He was everything I wasn't. Charismatic, flashy, the type who could dominate a boardroom with a smile and a joke. He climbed the corporate ladder faster than anyone I'd ever seen, and upper management adored him. We weren't friends, but I respected him. At least, I used to. Over the past year, though, something had started to feel off. Invoices were being approved without the usual checks. Large purchase orders bypassed the review process. Once, I discovered a discrepancy. An entire shipment of high-end laptops, worth nearly $200,000, was logged as received, but never actually arrived. When I raised it with Jason, he dismissed me with that easy laugh of his. "Relax, Dan. These things happen. The inventory team will sort it out." I wanted to believe him. I told myself it wasn't my place to dig deeper. But I knew better. In operations, you learn that little inconsistencies rarely stay little. They grow, they snowball, and if you don't catch them early, they can bring down entire departments. At the time, I didn't know it, but one of those little inconsistencies was about to detonate my entire career. And when it did, I would learn that the person holding the match wasn't some faceless executive or competitor. It was Jason himself. It started on a Monday morning, the kind where the coffee tastes like cardboard and the inbox looks like a disaster. I had barely settled at my desk when I got the email. Urgent. Meet with HR 9:30 a.m. Conference Room B. No context. No explanation. Just that. I've been through enough corporate cycles to know that urgent meetings with HR don't usually mean promotions. Still, I tried to stay calm. Maybe it was about restructuring. Maybe someone filed a complaint, and they just needed me as a witness. My mind churned through possibilities as I walked down the hall, but nothing could prepare me for what was waiting in that conference room. Jason was there, sitting at the far end of the table with a manila folder in front of him. His usual smirk was gone, replaced by a tight-lipped expression I couldn't read. Across from him sat Hannah from HR, her face as blank as a courtroom stenographer. "Daniel, have a seat," Jason said. His tone was clipped, mechanical. I sat. Hannah jumped right in. "Daniel, as of this morning, Redwood Electronics has reason to believe you've been involved in misappropriation of company property. Specifically, the theft of high-value electronics from our Austin warehouse." The words hit me like a gut punch. "What?" I said, unable to hide the disbelief in my voice. No, that's not possible." Jason slid the folder toward me. "We've conducted an internal review. Shipments under your oversight went missing. The paper trail leads back to you." I opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were printed emails, shipping manifests, and screenshots of internal systems, all with my name on them. They weren't fabricated, they were real documents. But they were twisted, cut out of context, presented like a smoking gun. "This is insane," I said, my voice cracking. "Jason, you know me. I don't touch inventory. I review data, I escalate issues, but I don't even have clearance to move product. There's no way." Jason didn't meet my eyes. "The evidence speaks for itself." "Are you serious right now?" I snapped, louder than I intended. "You know these systems can be manipulated. Anyone with admin access could have—" "Daniel," Hannah interrupted, her voice calm and cold, "we're placing you on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. Security will escort you to gather your belongings." Her words blurred into white noise. Security? Belongings? Pending investigation? My stomach dropped as I realized what was happening. I wasn't just being questioned, I was being fired. I glanced at Jason, desperate for some sign that this was a misunderstanding. He finally looked at me, and for a split second, I thought I saw it. The faintest flicker of guilt in his eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Effective immediately," Hannah continued. "We'll be in touch regarding the next steps." The meeting ended as abruptly as it began. Within minutes, I was walking through the open floor plan, security flanking me like I was some criminal. Colleagues stared but didn't speak. I didn't blame them. Who wants to talk to the guy being escorted out for theft? I sat in my car in the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My entire career, my reputation, had just been reduced to a single narrative. Daniel Carter, thief. I replayed everything in my head, trying to find the moment where it went wrong. The inventory discrepancies, the dismissed concerns, Jason's brushed-off explanations, and then it hit me. Jason, the inconsistencies, the missing laptops, the approval shortcuts, it all pointed back to him. The bastard had set me up. The realization burned hotter than my humiliation. I wasn't just collateral damage in some corporate screw-up. I was the scapegoat. He had orchestrated this, using me as cover for his own theft. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the manila folder, my name stamped across documents that told a story I knew wasn't mine. I'd always prided myself on staying calm under pressure, but that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Rage. Jason thought I'd roll over, that I'd accept this quietly and disappear, leaving him free to keep skimming off the top. But he didn't know me as well as he thought. If he wanted a scapegoat, fine. But I wasn't going down alone. I was going to prove my innocence. And when I did, I'd make sure the whole world saw who the real thief was. The first 2 days after being escorted out felt like walking through a fog. My phone buzzed constantly, some friends checking in, others fishing for gossip, but I ignored everything. I barely left my apartment. I couldn't shake the image of Jason's calm, calculating face across that conference table. The more I thought about it, the more I saw his fingerprints all over this setup. This wasn't sloppy, it was deliberate. I forced myself to think logically. I'd spent 10 years at Redwood Electronics. I knew our systems better than most managers. If Jason was stealing, how did he do it? How did he tie it back to me? And most importantly, how could I prove it? I pulled out my old work laptop, the one they hadn't taken because it was my personal property, and began retracing everything from memory. Purchase orders, inventory discrepancies, warehouse manifests. I knew our procurement platform had a detailed audit log, timestamps of who accessed and modified files. But access to those logs was restricted to senior managers. Jason had that clearance. I didn't. That's when it clicked. If Jason framed me, he would have needed to alter records under my credentials. And if he did, there had to be a pattern. Anomalies in access times, IP addresses that didn't match my login location, edits made outside my working hours. I spent hours sketching out a timeline of every major discrepancy that had landed me in that folder. I compared it to my own work calendar, my badge swipe data, which I still had copies of from old security reports, and emails. Slowly, a picture emerged. Multiple changes to procurement records were made under my username. At times, I wasn't even in the building. I didn't have the actual access logs to prove it yet, but now I knew what to look for. The next question was how to get them. I couldn't just walk back into Redwood and demand files. If I requested them through HR, Jason would know immediately and have time to cover his tracks. I needed something airtight, something undeniable. And not just for me, for everyone watching. That's when the idea hit me. Jason wasn't just a thief. He was arrogant. He loved attention. He hosted a weekly internal live stream called Redwood Rundown, where he updated staff and answered questions from employees in real time. It was his little stage, and upper management loved it because it boosted morale. If I could expose him there, live, in front of the entire company, he wouldn't have time to spin it. No PR filters, no backroom explanations, just raw truth. But to do that, I'd need more than suspicion. I'd need hard evidence, documents, timestamps, video footage, everything that tied him to the theft. So I started making calls. First to an old colleague, Sarah Patel, who used to work in IT security before transferring to another department. I explained my situation in cautious, clipped terms, not revealing everything at once. At first, she was hesitant. She didn't want to get dragged into a mess with management. But when I told her the full story, I heard the change in her voice. "Dan," she said, "if Jason's been altering system records, there will be access logs. And I know where they're stored. She couldn't pull them directly. It would trigger alerts, but she told me about a backup server where redundant logs were archived monthly for compliance. Accessing it wouldn't trip the same alarms. It wasn't easy, but with Sarah guiding me remotely, I managed to get into the backups using an old admin token she still had from her security days. What I found nearly floored me. There it was. Dozens of changes to procurement records made under my account. But the access IP addresses weren't mine. They matched Jason's office computer. And the timestamps? Many were logged late at night, well past the hours I ever worked. It was damning. But I didn't stop there. I cross-referenced those records with security camera logs from the warehouse, files I'd managed years ago during an audit. They showed Jason entering restricted areas alone on nights inventory went missing. Piece by piece, I built a case that no reasonable person could deny. Now I had a new problem: how to deliver it in a way Jason couldn't bury. If I sent it to HR, they'd sweep it under the rug to protect their golden boy. If I went to the police, it would take months, and Jason would still control the narrative. No, this needed to be public, immediate, unspinnable. That's when my plan crystallized. I'd confront him live on Redwood Rundown. Jason thought he controlled that show. But what if I hijacked it? What if, instead of his usual corporate pep talk, the entire company watched him get unmasked in real time? I spent the next week preparing. I studied the streaming platform Redwood used. I created a presentation, a simple bulletproof timeline of his fraud backed by screenshots, logs, and security footage. I rehearsed my delivery until I could recite it without a stutter. I even called a friend from my college days, now a journalist at a major tech news outlet, and gave her a copy of the evidence. "Hold this," I told her. "If anything happens to me, you run it." By the time the next Redwood Rundown was scheduled, I was ready. Jason thought he had buried me. He didn't realize I was digging my way out, straight through the floor under his feet. The morning of the Redwood Rundown felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. My heart thumped against my ribs, my palms slick as I double-checked my setup. If I pulled this off, I'd clear my name and bury Jason's career in one stroke. If I failed, I'd be a disgraced ex-employee streaming wild accusations, the kind of thing that would make me unemployable in the industry forever. There was no middle ground. Redwood used a proprietary platform for their streams, simple, secure, and accessible only to employees. But, like most internal systems, its security was more about appearances than actual fortification. Years ago, when I coordinated IT during a system migration, I'd learned the platform's architecture and retained a backdoor admin login buried deep in the code. I hadn't touched it in years. Now, it was my lifeline. Jason's livestream was scheduled for 2 p.m. By 1:30, I was sitting at my desk in my apartment, staring at two monitors, one running my slideshow, the other showing a live preview of the stream interface. Sarah, my old colleague, was on standby in case I needed technical backup. "You've got this," she told me. I hoped she was right. At 1:58, Jason appeared on the preview feed, clean-shaven, tailored suit, that trademark politician's smile plastered on his face. He looked like someone who had never spent a night worrying about the truth catching up to him. "Good afternoon, team," he said cheerfully as the countdown hit 0. "Welcome to another Redwood Rundown. We've got some exciting updates." I took a breath so deep it hurt and hit override. The screen flickered. Jason's face froze mid-sentence. Then the feed cut to black before my title slide appeared. The truth about the missing inventory and who's really responsible. For a second, silence. I could almost feel the thousands of employees across Redwood staring at their screens, confused. Then I unmuted my mic. "My name is Daniel Carter," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "Many of you know me. Some of you may have heard I was recently terminated for allegedly stealing company property. Today, I'm here to show you what really happened." The chat feed exploded. "Wait, what? Isn't he fired? Is this for real?" Jason's voice came through faintly in my earpiece. A private channel still connected. "Daniel, what the hell do you think you're doing? Cut the feed." I ignored him. Slide 2 appeared, a timeline of procurement record changes. These are modifications made under my username on dates and times I wasn't at work. Notice the access logs. I zoomed in on the IP addresses. They don't match my terminal. They match Jason Miller's office computer. The chat went from confused to stunned. "Holy crap. That's Jason's IP? Someone screen record this, now. Jason's calm mask cracked. This is illegal, he hissed in my ear. You're hacking company property. You're done. I clicked to the next slide. Security footage. Jason, entering the restricted warehouse late at night. Footage timestamps aligned perfectly with the access logs. Here's Jason, I said, my voice rising. On multiple nights, inventory went missing. Alone. No clearance. No witnesses. The same nights, those records were altered to implicate me. Jason went quiet. The chat didn't. Is this for real? I can't believe this. He's been stealing from us? I switched to my final slide. An email chain between Jason and an external buyer. Redacted for privacy, but clear enough to show he'd been brokering stolen goods. This isn't a misunderstanding, I said. This is theft. Coordinated and deliberate. And when I raised concerns, Jason framed me to cover his tracks. By now, the chat was a storm. Dozens of people tagging HR, the CEO, even Redwood's general counsel. I knew my journalist friend had already set the evidence to auto-send to her editor the moment the stream went live. Even if Jason killed the feed, the story wouldn't die. Jason finally unmuted on the public channel. This is outrageous, he barked, but his voice trembled. Daniel is a disgruntled ex-employee trying to smear me. I cut him off. Then explain why these records point directly to your terminal. Explain why you were in the warehouse after hours. Explain why you negotiated with external buyers using your company email. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The comments lit up with one collective sentiment. He's done. Redwood employees, I said, addressing everyone watching, I know this is a shock, but you deserve the truth. I've already sent this evidence to company leadership, the board, and federal investigators. This isn't going away. Jason stood up, his camera tilting awkwardly as he stormed off screen. I ended the stream. My apartment was dead silent, but I could feel my pulse hammering. It was over. I didn't know what would happen next. Lawsuits, retaliation, media chaos. But one thing was certain. Jason's reign of manipulation had just ended. And I'd ripped the mask off in front of everyone. The minutes after the stream ended were an adrenaline blur. My phone vibrated like it was possessed. Texts from old colleagues, missed calls from unknown numbers, notifications from social media where clips of the live stream were already going viral. By the time I could breathe, the story had left Redwood's walls. My journalist friend had done exactly what she promised. The evidence was online, published in a feature titled Senior Manager at Redwood Electronics Implicated in Internal Theft Scheme. It was out, and there was no putting it back in the box. By the next morning, the fallout began. An email hit my inbox, not from HR, not from Jason, but from Redwood's general counsel. Effective immediately, Jason Miller has been placed on unpaid leave pending a full investigation. We have also reported this matter to law enforcement. Please prepare to provide an official statement. It was the first sign of acknowledgement that my name was no longer the one in their crosshairs. Then came the calls. Former coworkers thanking me for exposing what they'd suspected but couldn't prove. A voicemail from the CEO himself, cold and apologetic. Mr. Carter, Redwood owes you an apology. I want to assure you that the company is conducting an independent review. 4. But the real validation came 3 days later, when Jason Miller's world imploded. It started with the leaked memo. The FBI had executed a search warrant on his home and office, seizing company devices and personal accounts. Then came the headlines. Redwood manager arrested in $1.2 million electronics theft ring. According to the report, Jason had been running a side operation for years, siphoning high-end products from inventory and reselling them through shell buyers. I wasn't just his scapegoat. I was the final thread in a web that unraveled his entire scheme. When the press reached out for comment, Redwood's official statement was simple. We commend Mr. Carter for bringing critical information to light. We are cooperating fully with authorities. Critical information. That was me. The irony was almost laughable. The same company that had security escort me out like a criminal was now calling me a whistleblower. But I didn't laugh when I saw Jason's mugshot. For all his arrogance, for all the smugness he'd wielded when he had me sitting across from him in that HR meeting, he looked small, pathetic, like a man who finally realized the performance was over. And yet, even in his ruin, he tried to fight back. Through his attorney, Jason released a statement claiming the evidence was fabricated, and that I'd orchestrated a, quote, elaborate revenge hack. but it didn't stick. The investigators had logs, surveillance, financial trails, all of it pointing back to him. The final nail came during the company-wide town hall a week later. Redwood's CEO appeared on the big screen in the same studio Jason had once dominated for his cheery rundown. This time, the tone was somber. "I want to start by addressing what happened last week," she said. "Our company failed one of our own. Daniel Carter was wrongfully terminated based on manipulated data. We apologize to him and to all of you. Mr. Miller acted alone in his misconduct and is no longer with Redwood. We are implementing new oversight measures to ensure this never happens again." There it was. Not just an apology, but a public one. And in front of every single person who'd watched me get escorted out like a criminal. When she finished, my inbox lit up again. Messages from colleagues who'd once looked at me with suspicion, now filled with gratitude. A few even admitted they'd saved recordings of the live stream. Just in case, Jason tried to spin it. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept. But my redemption didn't end with clearing my name. 2 weeks later, the same journalist who had helped me get the story out asked if I'd consider going on record for a follow-up piece about corporate whistleblowing. I agreed, not for fame, but because I wanted people to know what Jason had done and how easily a company could be blinded by loyalty to a charismatic manager. When the piece ran, titled "From Scapegoat to Whistleblower: How One Analyst Brought Down a Corporate Thief," I didn't expect what came next. Offers, consulting firms, risk management agencies, even advocacy groups that supported corporate whistleblowers. People wanted me, my skills, my experience, my story. Jason had tried to end my career. Instead, he launched the next chapter of it. In the weeks that followed Jason's arrest, my life shifted in ways I couldn't have imagined when I was sitting in that HR conference room being labeled a thief. My name was cleared, not just legally, but in the eyes of everyone who had once whispered about me in hushed tones by the coffee machines. The stain that Jason had tried to brand me with had been scrubbed clean by the truth. But beyond vindication, something else changed in me. I'd always thought of myself as just an operations guy, the quiet fixer who kept the wheels turning while others took the spotlight. Yet this ordeal taught me something about my own capacity for courage. I wasn't just capable of solving supply chain problems. I could stand up to injustice even when the odds were stacked against me. That realization was liberating. Redwood's CEO called me personally to offer reinstatement, a bigger role, a public apology. It was tempting, not because I wanted the job back, but because part of me wanted to walk through those doors and see the faces of everyone who doubted me. But I declined. I didn't want to go back to being the quiet problem solver in a company that had been so willing to believe the worst of me without question. Instead, I accepted a role with a consulting firm specializing in corporate risk and whistleblower protection. My job now is to help other companies prevent exactly what happened to me, to teach them that internal controls aren't just boxes to check, and that integrity needs to be valued as much as performance. Sometimes I think about Jason, not with anger anymore, but with a kind of detached pity. He had every opportunity to build something real with his career, but his greed blinded him. He underestimated me, thinking I'd be too scared, too quiet, too inconsequential to fight back. He couldn't have been more wrong. The moral of this story isn't just that justice can prevail. It's that underestimating someone's integrity can be the most dangerous mistake of all. Jason thought he was untouchable. He thought I'd stay silent, take the fall, and disappear. But truth has a way of surviving, especially when someone is willing to stand up and drag it into the light, no matter the cost. Now, when I walk into new boardrooms, I introduce myself with the same calm confidence I had before all of this. But people see me differently. Not just as an analyst, not just as a consultant, as someone who refused to be buried by a lie. If there's one thing I want anyone reading or hearing my story to take away, it's this: your dignity is worth protecting, even when the odds are against you. Even when those in power try to strip it away. Because sometimes, the quietest person in the room can end up having the loudest voice of all.